pretrial preparation. The pretrial preparation is what you do to prepare for the trial. What do you physically actually do? Well, there's a number of things. Obviously, you want to develop your questions that you're going to ask of witnesses. You want to develop what your opening and closing will be. You want to develop the order in which you call witnesses. You want to develop those things that will allow you to understand what is going first, what is following it through the end of trial. You want to be able to understand what your witnesses are going to say. So you want to prepare your witnesses, work with them, help them to understand the best ways for them to communicate your story. You want to make sure that you develop what kinds of documents or exhibits are you going to use? What are you going to display to the jury? What are you going to use to complement the oral testimony that is being provided? Let's talk about each. Development of questions. Development of material for your opening and closing. When you develop questions, you have to ask yourself questions of your own. That is, what is the message? What is the point I am trying to accomplish with each witness? With each set of questions, I'm going to ask my own witness. With each set of questions, I'm going to ask on cross-examination of the other witness. What is my point? You need to understand what you want that witness to communicate. Now, presumably you've learned that through that pretrial process. You've learned that through all of your information gathering, through all of your discovery, your depositions, your requests for admissions, your interrogatories, your production requests, your evaluation of the evidence or potential evidence, the interviews, the witnesses that you speak to, all of the information that makes up that entire core of that trial matter. How am I going to use that information? How do I go about using the information in a way that's going to be productive? Well, that will help me to then draft my questions. What's my theme? Is my theme that we have a killer on our hands and only a 5-year-old, would not be able to see that we have a killer on your hands? Are we trying to show that this person is a fraudster and engages in Ponzi scheme after Ponzi scheme? Am I saying that this person is probably a nice person, but they just didn't pay for the goods? Am I trying to tell a story? What is my theme? What is the kind of message that I globally want the jury to understand? If it's in front of a judge, what do I want the judge to understand? By doing this, that helps me frame what questions are then going to be necessary to communicate that message. So I first have to have my message, my thematic approach, my mantra, here's my story of why I win in 60 seconds or less, in 20 seconds or less. So I develop that theme. Once I develop that theme, I then develop questions. I take, how do I start that story? Who do I call first? How do I set the framework for the jury to understand the landscape of what we're accomplishing here? Here's how it all began. Here's how the process worked. Here's how it culminated in what I'm saying happened. Here's why you need to rule my way. So, if I carry that theme and then I ask those questions, you can see how directional I am. I then take the witnesses, place them in that order, which are then going to answer the questions which I've asked, which are then going to paint the theme which I'm trying to portray, which helps me to win the case. So, once I've developed the questions, I then will bring the witnesses in, and I will train the witnesses and work with the witnesses. But until I have the questions, it's not really purposeful or beneficial to sit with that witness and start training them. So what I want to do is develop how am I going to ask questions that will allow that witness to convey the story. Well, I have to know something about the witness. I have to know something about what they know. What do I mean by that? I have to know something about the witness. Well, I have to know, what is the personality of that witness? Is it a very outgoing person who's going to be great on the stand? Is it somebody who's terrified? Is it somebody who's very introverted? Is it somebody who's very, very mechanical and arithmetic? Is it somebody that's flowery and creative? Is it somebody who uses their hands? Is it somebody that doesn't? Is it somebody that is just not going to look at the jury? Is it somebody that's going to be warm and friendly? You need to know this dynamic because it will help you to understand what's the best material to have them communicate. Or if they're the only person communicating it, what is the most comfortable way to get them to communicate that? How can I ask questions in a way that will promote the best delivery of that evidence, of that information? So by doing this, I get a good understanding of how to frame my questions. I understand what that witness is likely to act, what that witness is likely to do when questioned, how that witness is likely to behave. The concept being that what I'm trying to accomplish is to have that witness be in the most comfortable environment, communicating the specific information I want in the manner in which I want. So I develop those questions in direct examination that will help me to do that. Remember, I'm in direct examination. I must ask non-leading questions. They must be who, what, where, tell me, explain. Please explain to the jury where you were at this time. Please tell me about what you did this day that brought you to this position. The concept of I have to let them tell the story. If I'm preparing for cross-examination, then I'm sort of telling the story. I'm leading them to a particular location, to a particular place, to get them to say a particular thing. So development of those questions based on who the witness is will be critical. Now, the second component is developing questions based on what the witness knows. So it's not only how they're going to behave, but it's what they actually know. Both of them are important because how you deliver something is just as important as what you are delivering. If I say to you, "Are you out of your mind?" What does that convey? Anger? If I say, "Are you out of your mind?" What emotion am I conveying? Am I conveying, "Are you out of your mind?" that I think you're great? If I say, "Are you out of your mind? Who do you think you are?" What am I conveying? So, depending on the delivery mechanism, sometimes it's as important as the actual words that they say. So, it's important to understand that you want to marry the witness's demeanor, the witness's delivery mechanism, with the questions. And you want to do it in a story format, in a chronological way. Just communicate that. I want also the witness to also refer to things. Whenever you can display things, use exhibits. Sometimes I can get an actual witness off the stand. "Hey, expert engineer, would you step down to this blackboard or step down to this big poster and explain what the roof looked like, why these streak marks are so long, why this knife is shaped in the way it's shaped, what that picture portrays," and have them come down with a laser pointer or an actual pointer and sort of be a professor. Why? Because a juror is going to be much more comfortable with someone talking to them without the barriers of being in a box, that is the witness box, than they are if you're standing down freely talking. It also is a level of comfort for both the witness and the juror. So it's important to try to find ways to best communicate that message, both from their demeanor and the way in which you ask the question. But you also must add that the more comfortable I make them, the way in which I show things, the way in which I combine things, the way in which I help the jury to marry those two components with a visual helps to even cement it further. I say to people, if you want somebody to listen, tell them. If you want them to understand, show them. So this showing process should be a component of any great trial lawyer. So now that I've given that direct examination questioning out, and now that I have given that demeanor of how I'm going to approach that, now that I have completed the questions which I want to ask. Now that I understand that the questions that I am asking are going to be communicated in a way that will elicit the best communication from my witness, now that I have learned what documents or visuals I'm going to use, I can proceed forward with then meeting with the witness and showing them what you plan on doing. Getting to the witness and saying, let me go through what I intend to ask you. Let me explain to you what I'm going to show you. Let me videotape you so you can see what you look like. Maybe you have somebody that always scratches their head, or they're fiddling with their nose, and they watch it on video, they go, oh my God. Maybe somebody always looks down, and I say, the video camera is asking the questions. Sometimes I'll sit directly or stand directly behind the camera and ask them questions, so they're looking directly forward. Sometimes I will move off camera, and I'll see if they'll look at me or look at the jury. And I'll put a big sticker on top of the camera and put jury, because I want them, remember, you're not convincing me, convincing the jury. So I practice with them. I listen. I see, are they communicating in the way in which I expected them to communicate? Consistent with that demeanor, consistent with the message I'm trying to communicate. If they are, great. If not, I either have to change the way I'm asking, or I got to change them. Depending on how they are prepared, you'll know whether one option is better than the other. If the person is just nervous, for example, and they need to do it a couple times, you can prepare 100 times with a witness. You want to make it so that the witness is really just ending up having a conversation. Yes, Mr. Major, I was there, and let me just tell you about what happened. And it becomes second nature to them. And I was sitting here, and they were sitting there, even if it's the first time they're performing. Because the more comfortable they are, the more believable they are. The more convicted they are, the more they look in the camera than looking over here, the more you're going to believe them. The more that they are communicating in a way that's productive, the more you're going to be successful. So you see how I've now combined the questioning process with the witness process and the exhibit process. That is, what am I showing them? What am I having them help me to display to the jury? How am I accomplishing my messaging? Part of that questioning is also understanding what the other witnesses will say. That is, the opposing, the adverse witnesses, the people who aren't on your side. You need to have the same thought pattern. What is my point with that police officer? What is my point with that defendant? What is my point with that witness? Am I just trying to get them to confirm that they were there on the day of the confession? Am I just trying to confirm that they were the person who bagged the knife, put it in the bag for evidence? Am I just trying to confirm that they saw what color the light was? If that's all I'm trying to prove, I need to make sure my questions are narrow enough to prove that. You don't have to win a trial at every witness. You set up witnesses like bowling pins. You set up witnesses so that you can roll a strike with your closing. You set up witnesses so that they tell the story for you, so that when you get up, you can explain, you see, I brought the evidence to you. It wasn't my story. It was the true story. It was what happened, and you heard it person by person. And all I did was guide you on this journey to truth. You can see how much more powerful that is than if I'm doing a lot of the convincing. If I'm trying to convince the jury rather than the witnesses and the evidence. So it is extremely important in pretrial preparation to make sure that you dedicate the time to ask questions that you think will get your message across, to understand the dynamic of the witness who's communicating so you get the most effective result, to use visuals and other things to help paint a picture of what you're trying to portray, and to allow the witness to bond with the jury. It is important to understand what questions, what points, what messaging you're trying to get across in your cross-examination, so that this way you can prepare a great trial, so that you can prepare the great opening, the great direct examination, the great cross-examination, the great closing argument, so that you can give the jury the best story told in the best way, in the most convincing, the most persuasive manner that makes you a star, that makes you a winner. If you engage in this process, if you take the time to understand what you need to do, you're likely to be successful. And by the way, I might add that this process also applies to the preparation of opening and closing statements, or as some people refer to it, opening statement and closing argument. Conceptually, you're using in your opening statement your roadmap. You're saying, I have laid out my entire story. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, jury, what I'm about to show you. Let me show you what I'm about to show you. And I want you to follow the law and come back with a verdict in my favor when I'm done. When I'm in closing, I told you when I got up I was going to show you stuff. I showed you that stuff. The law says that if I show you this stuff, you got to do this. You got to rule in my favor. So by engaging in that preparation, by understanding my thematic message, by communicating that, I prepare myself in a thorough way that makes me a winner no matter what.